It's electric. Boogie, woogie, woogie. Good morning, CLC. I hope everybody had a wonderful week. I hope everybody is ready for this wonderful week coming up. Before we get started with our inspirational message from Jesse, we have a few announcements. The first thing, which is actually not an announcement, but like a re-announcement, I guess you could say, and a round of applause and appreciation and gratitude for the newly ordained Reverend Lisa Ryan. Yay! She just got back last night. We are so very proud of you. Thank you for being an inspiration to us. Thank you for blessing us with your presence, with your message, with your love. So thank you. We love you. We love you so much. Right now, I invite you to relax in this moment. Just for right now, put everything aside. If you need to, go ahead and just wiggle your shoulders or your neck, releasing all tension and stress you may have in your body. Any worries, any excitements. Right now, just put them aside. Allow yourself to be here now. Universal love enfolds me. Universal wisdom inspires me. Universal spirit enlightens me. Universal power encircles me. I am one, and all is well. As we begin this inner healing process, let me invite you to relax in quiet confidence, opening yourself to the miracle-working higher power. Now symbolize the unity of your thinking and feeling nature by touching your chest with your right hand, and let my words act as your own for your own inner healing, acceptance, and receptivity. I acknowledge that there is a power, intelligence, and wisdom greater than my own. I am in the midst of it, and it is in the midst of me, sensitive and responsive to my every thought, word, action, and feeling. I now make this true for myself by saying aloud, I acknowledge. Acknowledging this higher power working through my life, I admit that I am personally responsible for solving my own problems while being guided and assisted by something greater than myself. As I am ready to surrender the conflicts of my ego to the wisdom of the infinite presence, I simply speak these words. I surrender. Knowing that forgiveness is the key to unconditional love and the feeling of heaven, I now unconditionally forgive anyone and everyone who has ever injured me in any way, real or imagined. And I now forgive myself for all of my mistaken judgments and their resulting actions. From my deepest level of understanding, I now say, I forgive. Realizing that I continually experience the effects of my own thinking, I now choose to allow this higher power to recreate me deeply. filling my mind with thoughts that are only positive, constructive, loving, and beautiful. I call upon this divine inflow by stating aloud, I choose. I now center upon that one special idea that I'm willing to accept as real for me in this coming week. In visualizing this idea as already acted upon and brought to pass, and seeing my idea become a fact of my experience, I enjoy the happiness and peace of my thought fulfilled and gratefully speak these words. I accept. Knowing that I have an everlasting place in the midst of the power that sustains all creation, as well as the support of all those around me, I allow myself to relax in the peace of fulfillment and gratitude and say, I release. Now, in my mind's eye, I envision the presence of someone near and dear to me. This can be a friend, a family member, a teacher or mentor, someone who has touched my life in deep and loving ways. Someone who may not be physically present in the room with me this morning. I turn toward that image in my mind's eye and say, I'm grateful for the good in your life. Now I open my eyes, turn to the world around me, and joyfully speak to anyone physically present in the room or virtually on this broadcast, and sharing confidence and gratitude and saying, I'm grateful for the good in your life.
Okay, a couple of things before I get started here. Reverend Lisa Ryan will be ordained in a ceremony on this stage at a date to be determined. The same stage on which the Reverend Marcia Lehman was ordained in 2008. It is a beautiful ceremony. When it's announced, you do not want to miss it. We'll stream it and schneem it and do whatever we tweet it and all, but if you can be here for this, it's one of the few kind of antique traditions that we have in New Thought. It's a ceremony very similar to the one Ernest Holmes himself went through with Agnes Gaylor in the Divine Science Movement in Seattle around 1912. That tells you how far back it goes. It's scripted. Anyway, you don't want to miss it. I just didn't want you to think that we were this cheesy organization that just printed out a certificate and said, here. Okay, there's an actual thing. Today, we're on part 4 of a seemingly interminable series. Now, a part 4 of a series on the basics of the science of mind, which will run to 9 weeks through January and into February, to the end of February, and then we'll pick up with something else, the application of the principles. And we're using a book called 10 Ideas That Make a Difference, and there's a book study on this that Sarah's leading presently. And I want to mention and tie in to the talk. Today we're talking about race consciousness, the collective consciousness of the species, and how we choose, and sometimes choose by not choosing, and experience a default sort of reaction as a result of not choosing. And so we must be mindful of how we choose. If you've heard of mindfulness, I'll tell you where. I'll tell you where it started. I was thinking about this the last couple of days. 32 years ago, when I was a new minister, relatively new minister, I wanted to expand my learning outside of just the New Thought material that I'd had to go through in my training. So I'd read Ernest Holmes, and I'd read the Unity stuff, and I'd read Emerson and Emma Hopkins, and on and on. But the human potential movement, the conscious living movement, was really taking off at the time. There was a magazine called Common Boundary. Some of you may remember this. It's long defunct. But it was a monthly, and it had wonderful articles in there, and it brought voices together. This is basically pre-internet, and so it brought people together that with their bodies of information that you might not otherwise have explored. So they put on an annual conference, and in 1990 I decided to go to this, and it was in Arlington, Virginia, Crystal City, Virginia, and they had a big hotel, and they had, oh man, they had the speakers at this thing. Joan Borisenko did a workshop. Robert Bly, the poet, was there. Maladona Somé, who sadly just passed in December, the great West African teacher. And they all had breakout sessions in this hotel in these, you know how they do in these rooms, right? And there were 50 or 100 in each of these sessions, and so you could get quite close to and actually interact with the presenter. And so I made all of these great contacts and learned all this great stuff. And then one night they had the keynote. And for the keynote, they took down all the walls to make up the grand ballroom of the hotel. And the keynote was not an American writer, strong personality, motivational type, not a medical person, not a scientist, but a Buddhist monk. And he spoke, and he said things like, before you pick up the phone, smile. And here are all these educated people, there's all of this heavy-duty consciousness stuff going on. And it just kind of gave way in front of what he was saying. Pick up the phone and smile and think good thoughts and think love to the world. And the world will respond in kind. The room was jammed. The fire marshal would have been over the moon. There were people standing around the walls. There were people sitting like in the aisle here on the carpet. They were sitting next to the chairs on the aisles, packed in to hear this man, Thich Nhat Hanh, who just passed away in the last 3 days. Look up his work. If you've heard of mindfulness, that concept originated in that form through him. Bless you. That's something he would say. He'd say, bless you. So I want to honor him, and we'll do more about him in the year to come on his mindfulness practices and his books. And I just want to say this about him, and I may circle back to it later in the talk, but when you think of a Buddhist monk teaching mindfulness, a lot of times where people go with that as well, that he was sort of this passive individual who just kind of stood there. Oh, not this man. He lived in exile in France. He was Vietnamese, you know, and he denounced the Vietnam War, and he was exiled and then made his way back twice to Vietnam into a communist regime, walked in there and started schools and started clinics all over the country. He fed the poor. He lifted the fallen. He did all kinds of things, and he inspired others to do the same thing. So Godspeed to Thich Nhat Hanh, called Tay by his students, and you can look him up and learn more about him. So what he did was affect the collective consciousness in a really powerful way. He happens to be somebody that we've heard of. He went public, so to speak. He wrote books. He gave workshops. He talked. There are a lot of people who don't go public, who don't write, who don't speak, who don't, publicly kind of flout their ideas. But behind the scenes, they're churning away. They're putting a good intention, a healthy, wholesome intention into the collective idea. We upload to it, and we download from it, this collective mind. See, you have a consciousness, right? To recap briefly, your consciousness is composed of a conscious aspect and a subconscious aspect, well represented by the yin-yang symbol of Taoism that you see back here on the wall. And you'll notice that in each aspect of it, there's a little of the other. So there's a dash of conscious and subconscious and vice versa. Well, your conscious mind is the one you're most familiar with. It's the one that's been educated your whole life. The world started talking to it when you were well, basically the womb, you know, and certainly in the crib. The world started talking and it said, here's what you need to know. Here's what you need to know about life. Just like I'm talking to your conscious mind right now. So you're sitting there and you're listening to what I'm having to say and you're wondering where I'm going with it. You're thinking about lunch and football today or what you got to do tomorrow or something. And all of this is mixed in together and it's all fine. And then every now and then you self-correct. Lunch can wait, football I'm not really that into, but it's the season, right? And you kind of bat yourself around. I can think about tomorrow. Oh, wait, but I need to think about next Thursday because that's important. You see, and so we're constantly doing this. And the conscious mind, it gets a little wobbly as a result because it's constantly being corrected, you know. But it's where the information comes in and where a lot of it stays. Some of it trickles down to the subconscious. The part that goes into the subconscious is the part that we feel. The part that we get excited about, the part that we get alarmed by, that's what goes into the subconscious. And it's in the subconscious that the work is done of replicating the idea, the thought package, in form. What life seems to largely do is take ideas and formalize them. It does this sort of automatically. It's its nature, you know? It takes ideas and it stamps them out in form. Life doesn't really evaluate what it's doing. It just does this. It has within it components that evaluate. You're one of them. I'm another. We evaluate the conscious thread. We decide. We have the power to decide which of the conscious bits of data we're going to get excited about. But we don't know we have this power, most of us, most of the time. That's why we have this. That's why we have a place like this. That's why we have these classes that we're constantly going through. That's why people write books, put out material, do all this, is to wake up to the idea that you have the ability to choose not just what to think, but which thoughts to feel. And those thoughts clump together as thought patterns and go into, for want of a better way of putting it, the subconscious mind. And in the subconscious mind, they meet up with similar ideas from the conscious choices of other sentient beings. Okay? And this is how you run into people. This is how, and you have affinities and you have interests and say, I overheard you saying blah, 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 and that's, did you know that and all of a sudden there's a backstory there, and we call the whole thing coincidence. We call it synchronicity. Isn't that interesting? Isn't that interesting that the minute I decided to, I don't know, buy a house, these other people decided to sell it? That kind of thing, you know? Right? Isn't it amazing that as soon as I decided I wanted a certain job, somebody else decided to retire or move into a different field, or on and on? Isn't it amazing? How did you meet your mate? Where was your mate? Did you grow up on the same street? Probably not. So how did all of that happen? And when this class starts that Danielle mentioned on Tuesday night, it's, last I looked, we had students in 11 states, I think, in 2 countries, and it'll be more diverse than that by the time we set sail with the thing. But all of these people are going to get together. It's on Zoom, you know, and so everybody's going to get together and they're going to share how they heard about it and what drew them to it and where they first found out about science of mind. And it will be, as it always is, fascinating. Just as it is when you tell your story. Some of you grew up right in this neighborhood. Most of you didn't, and on and on. You get the picture. So this is how these things happen. So when you say, well, I'd like a new job or a new home or a new mate or whatever, and you talk to, let's say, a practitioner or somebody about it or your friend here, And we say, well, we're going to treat about this. What we're treating to know is that the subconscious package of energy that you're unleashing is meeting up with its really significant other, where it's meeting up with a sympathetic vibration from someone else or lots of someone else's, where you're now kind of in the, multiple listing service of consciousness, where now all of these opportunities open up to you. That's great, isn't it? That's wonderful news for you. You don't have to figure out where your good is coming from. I love that line. I don't know where it came from, but somebody asked a spiritual teacher, where is my good coming from? And the spiritual teacher said, it's coming from wherever it is right now. Meaning, I have no clue, you have no clue, okay, but it is coming. How do you know it's coming? Because you intend it to come. Because that's the package of thought that you've surrounded with feeling that's become belief. We teach here the power of belief. What we don't breathe down your neck about is what to believe. Have you noticed that? I want some love for that. I want some love for this place. That, okay, we don't do that. We're not like, no, you can't believe that. You should believe this over here. No, it's that it is done to you as you believe. And once you know that, if there's any adjustment that ought to be made to your beliefs for your own good, you'll make those adjustments, won't you? Or know the reason why. And sometimes people don't make the adjustments, and they say, well, I like shooting myself in the foot repeatedly. I've grown, I don't really enjoy it, but I've grown accustomed to it. It's familiar. And I'll take the familiar over the unknown, any day. So, but mostly people make, wiser and healthier choices when they realize just what a choice-making entity they are. Now, when you make these choices, when you have the idea and you surround it with feeling and it goes into the subconscious, as I said, it goes into what Ernest Holmes, our founder, called the race consciousness, which is often taken wrongly to mean having to do with racial identity within humankind, which actually races don't really exist as such in humankind, but he's talking about the human race. He's talking about the species. The human species has a field of consciousness around it. Now, that's a lot of people, 7 billion and counting right now. But there are subsets within that 7 billion that are more useful to you to understand, more personal, closer to you, like your home, your neighborhood, your town, your country, on and on, Every club, society, religion, occupation, sexual identity, gender identity, ethnic identity, style, interest, all of it, each of it has a field of consciousness around it. It's been called a morphogenetic field, if you need the formal name of it, but it's a field of consciousness around it. Information that's taken in, it becomes like an organism, so information that's taken in at one point of that organism is known or more immediately available to be known at every point within that organism. Remember what Jesus said, "And I, if I be lifted up, lift all men unto me"? That's what I'm talking about, that right there. So, new information of a higher technology, a higher way of being. Sometimes it's a higher, more complex way of being, a scientifically advanced, evolved way of being, and sometimes it's a return to simplicity, such as what Thich Nhat Hanh taught. He said, while you're trying to accomplish all of this amazing stuff in the world, notice your breathing. Notice your breathing. When you walk, this is the quote in the meme I put on the Facebook page. He says, when you walk as though your feet kiss the earth. Walk as though your feet kiss the earth. Now, the modern American might look at that and say, oh, come on. It's a little twee or something, isn't it, But I'll tell you what, when you walk as though your feet kiss the earth, where do your problems go? Where did your headache go? Your anxiety, your agita, See? It's useful. And it's old, man. It's old. It goes way, way back to the ancestors It reminds me of David Carradine in Kung Fu, on the rice paper, right? Leave no mark. Why is he doing that? He's doing that because he was told to. It's part of his training. But he's doing that. It's a metaphor. It's a metaphor for walking through the world. Now they speak of the carbon footprint, that so many of the heavy carbon footprint that we have, to tread lightly on the earth. When you become conscious of this, it's reverence. People go through life and they say, I have nothing to revere. I have nothing to look up to. Life is just pay the bills until you die, But when you start acting reverently right where you are, all of a sudden this becomes sacred space. It's been that in potential all along. Now it becomes that in actuality. And as you introduce that into the collective consciousness, it affects in a positive way everybody. I saw this cute cartoon this week. I was going to tell like Lisa and Danielle and Jeffrey, I was going to say, your continued punctuality and good spirits are starting to affect the morale of this workplace. What is morale? What is the attitude? What is the collective vibe but an agreement? And so the collective mind is a collective agreement, and it's constantly shifting. Things go in and out of fashion, in and out of style, in and out of attention, And so you stand back and you practice a little bit of detachment from that. Not so eager to follow the crowd, not so eager to go where the latest trend might take you. But step back a moment and just observe without judgment. I'm not saying criticism or snarkiness, but just stand back and look at it and say, interesting. Isn't that interesting what people are deciding to do today? And people throw themselves around sometimes, the fear, you've heard of FOMO, the fear of missing out. This is one, the fear of missing. Somewhere right now, somebody is having a better time than I am. And they didn't invite me. Now, where does that exist? Nowhere. And yet everywhere, okay? Because if you walk around with that kind of spirit, it becomes this cloud, like the cartoon character with the dark cloud, rainy cloud over its head years ago, and you walk around with this to dispel the thing. Be mindful, breathe, stand in the moment, enjoy the moment, trust the moment. And so, in so doing, you contribute into the collective consciousness something really powerful, and you draw the same back down. What Holmes went on and on about, because he wanted us to know this, and so he kind of drilled down deep on it, but that if you don't become aware of the collective consciousness, it kind of runs you. As a matter of fact, he sort of quoted Carl Jung, another wonderful spiritual teacher well worth studying, who said, until we make the unconscious, which is what Jung called the subconscious, really, until we make the unconscious conscious, until you make, he put it, the unconscious conscious, it will rule your life, and you will call it fate. And you will call it fate. See? So a lot of us have well, that's the hand I was dealt. It's just luck. Just luck. They say, you hear this, they say. Remember Lisa's talk last year? There are no them. I keep bringing that up. It's great. There are no them. There also are no they in that respect. They say, they're saying right now that, and all of a sudden what happens? Your stomach falls out, right? They're saying there's a meteor out there, asteroid or something. They say. Very seldom do we take it the other direction. They say that things are getting better. They say that love is happening. They say that joy is breaking out. They say that big creative ideas are everywhere. Bless you. Read a piece. Said, don't write a book. Whatever you do, don't write a book. Nobody's reading them. Nobody's buying them. Nobody's interested. Nope. Yeah, nope. Nope, nobody's interested. Only this tiny percentage of books ever sell over about 100,000 copies. So whatever you do, don't write a book. Go find something else to do. And I think it was reverse psychology. I think they put this out there so that people would look at that and say, I'm starting today. I'm starting today on my book. Because I don't care who reads it. I don't care who buys it. I got to say it. I got to say it. That's why to write a book. That's why to write a book. Well, when we become aware of the unconscious / subconscious collective agreement, collective mind, race consciousness, whatever you want to call it, there's a field. It's a simple way to put it. There's a field of consciousness surrounding us. We have a constant companion. We have something that's better than Google. With all due respect to Google, we have something that's better than going through your phone and looking stuff up, because all that's on your phone is stuff that somebody else has loaded, right? Go to Wikipedia, look stuff up, somebody else wrote it and somebody else edited it, and it may be 80, 90%, 100% correct, who knows? But it was pre-existing information built on circuitry that already existed in terms of how the human animal communicates with itself. You go to infinite mind. It's a storehouse of things, most of which have never happened, most of which haven't happened yet, exist strictly in potential. In potential. How things could be. So we revere a teacher like Thich Nhat Hanh, who brought mindfulness to our attention. He may have coined the term, but he didn't invent mindfulness. He practiced it and he brought it to the world. So does the Dalai Lama. So have a lot of great spiritual teachers, many of them from the East, where a more relaxed and serene sort of environment gave rise to that. In the West, we're busy explaining things. I think of Aquinas and so on. We're figuring stuff out, writing it all down, you know. In the East, there's more like direct experience. And of course, there's a blending now of all of this. But think of the great spiritual teacher, Jesus, who brought into the world love one another. Who basically, with respect, if I may, collapse his message, kind of cartoon it a little bit. He basically said, you got a problem? Love one another. You need something? Love one another. You're in pain? Love one another. The Apostle James put it this way. He said, is any among you afflicted? Let him pray. Okay? You know what you need to do. Love one another and love the Lord your God. Love the power. Love the power and the imagery of the power that you have in mind. And everything will begin to work itself out. As if by magic, as if by really high magic. Not sleight of hand, but an actual transmutation, as the alchemists do, of your base elements into gold, of your lower thinking, lower chakras, what have you, your lower awareness of things, your sort of reptilian brain, and all of that transmuted, all of that transformed by the knowing that there is a power, there is a presence, and I'm interacting with it constantly, not just when I fold my hands in prayer, not just on Sundays when I spend my spiritual time, but all the time. There's a constant, uninterrupted data flow between me and this one life surrounding me. Surrounding me. And I can ignore it, and there's a time for that to just rest, and I can turn my attention toward it, and I can draw down from it amazing and powerful things. So more on this next week. I encourage you to check out Sarah's book study on 10 ideas, and I'm going to close today with a really, really short treatment. Lisa will give you a slam bang treatment here at the end, but this is yeah, no pressure. That's what I said last week. Monica came in. She said, your talks the last 2 weeks have just been excellent. And I thought, oh, God. now I don't know what dun, 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 dun. You talk about pressure. You like football? Did you see those two games last night? Watch either one of them. Both of them ended with a field goal in the last 5 seconds. You talk about, in one it was snowing and 10 degrees or something, and the pressure on these players to just, only, hundreds of millions of dollars and everything else are riding on what you're about to do. Go do well. And they did it. So, okay, here it is. Ernest Holmes from 10 Ideas That Make a Difference. There is one life. That life is God, and that life is my life right now. I live and move and have my being in this life, and it is in me. This life is good, and my life is not separate from it. I affirm that every cell, organ, and action of my physical body is animated by the divine life within me. The infinite intelligence which indwells me guides me into right action in all my relationships and affairs. I am one with the whole of God, and since the whole is perfect, I am perfect, and so it is. So.
Before we do giving time, as our ushers make their way to the back right now, I have a little story. Jesse was talking about just inspiration and how consciousness just sends you something. I mentioned earlier that we have this movie discussion that's coming up with practitioner Jim Cantor about the movie Big Fish. He told us how he was inspired. The movie is about a father and son relationship and just getting to know the father on a deeper level. Because, of course, we as children, all children, we have a fictionalized idea of what our father is. And then we go to that and then come to find out, they're human. Oh, my goodness. Wow. Craziness, But he told us a little bit about his father, and especially watching this movie and how it was inspired. And I don't know if this is the first movie discussion we've had. If it is not, this may be the first one in a very long time, and I hope there are going to be many more to come. But I just thought this was such a great idea to talk about this from a spiritual standpoint, a movie. We have lots of book studies going on, and not knocking any book study. We love our books. We all love our books. But I just thought that was such an excellent idea. I can't wait to see more movie discussions come up and out of us, just because how cool is that? How cool is that? That we just, and thank you, Jim, for coming up with, let's talk about a movie, because they're good too, So, I love that. And speaking of consciousness, I was listening and I heard they say the people who heard today's message are going to be extra generous with us. And they are just waiting to give their monetary funds to this community, knowing how wonderful this teaching is. So, I'm knowing this, and I know that you all will help us with this. Thank you for everything you give to us, including your money and your time and your energy and your service and your love. Thank you for all of that. And now I invite you to say with me, divine love, through me, blesses and multiplies all the good I am and have, all the good I give and receive. I am prosperous now, and so it is.
All right, I did spend a week in the desert. Ironically, I didn't shock myself as much in the desert as I did here. I don't know what that's about. So, I did the last day, though. I did shock myself on a few people. It was great. But one of the things that I learned, and I learned a lot, is the difference between change and transformation. And so I'm going to tell you that now. And Jesse reminded me of that when he made the comment about transmutation, which is probably along the same lines as transformation. When you change, there's the possibility of changing back. When you transform, there's no going back. So, if you are ready, because you got to be ready to transform. is like the butterfly, that caterpillar. Woo, can I say the word? Caterpillar cocoons itself and then turns into absolute goo and then comes back out. So transformation can be messy. So if you are in the middle of messy, one, know that it's okay. It is part of the process. And two, you're going to come out beautiful. So let's transform into. And the good news about transformation is you don't have to do it just once. You can do it as many times as you want. You can keep growing and transforming ad infinity. So know with me that there is one life, one power, one presence, one love. And that life is our life now. This love is what we are made up of. This love is what flows through us. I am a divine channel. And I know that you are too. And as we stretch out into that infinite and say yes to that love and call it down to flow through us out into the world so that we may transform this world into a place that works for everyone. As we watch the transformations, as simple as a smile, and as big as a shift in consciousness, we are that love. So let us go out and walk. And as we walk, to kiss the earth with our feet. And to smile at one another and channel that love through that smile. So that when we look in each other's eyes, we see that child of God looking back at us. And through this, all can be and will be healed. And I am grateful to know this love. I am grateful to be this love. I am grateful to be this channel of love. And I am grateful to know each and every one of you as this channel of love. And I am grateful for this teaching. I am grateful for this place. I am grateful for our senior minister, our practitioners, our musicians, and everybody who comes here for that transforming love. And I am grateful just to be. And I relax into that infinite love and know that it is so. And so it is.
Something wonderful is happening through me. I feel it in my body. I feel it in my mind. I feel it in everything I am. I choose it. I trust it. I use it. And I love it. And so it is.